Grace and peace, everyone. I hope it's not raining where you are. Had to take cover for a little bit. Our prayer tool this week is a part 2 on being a prayer covering, on covering prayer. And we're looking at 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 and 8 from the English Standard Version, the ESV. Here's what it says. The end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. Don't miss that. Verse 8, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. Isn't that something, how context makes a difference in how we've heard love covers a multitude of sins, just randomly quoted. So we want to talk a little bit about that and how that affects our prayer lives. Now, the New American Standard Bible reads like this. The end of all things is near. Therefore, be of sound judgment and sober spirit for the purpose of prayer. Verse 8, above all, keep fervent in your love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. The Apostle Peter here is addressing the saints. This message is to the saints. And so the times around us require sound judgment and sobriety in the spirit for the purpose of prayer, not for the blessing, not as a condition of favor. You see where I'm going? But for the purpose of prayer. So here's what verse 7 suggests. It suggests that bad judgment and an overtaken spirit detour us from the purpose of prayer. So it's why we renew our minds unto truth, why we are transformed by the renewing of our minds, making good decisions, being sober in the spirit. It's why we keep watch over the gates, the points of entry into our soul, and monitor what enters our spirit. This is why we do it, for the purpose of prayer. And all of this is fine, but then we see another command in verse 8. Above all, make good decisions, be sober in the spirit, be in position for the purpose of prayer. But above that, above all, saints, keep a fervent, on fire love for one another, because love covers all the missing the mark that we do. Love covers a multitude of sin. Love gets us right. Love does not keep our secrets. Let's look at that when it comes to the purpose of prayer. Prayer leaders, if people trust you, and if people trust your prayers and they trust your prayer life, you know a lot of stuff about a lot of people. It's not the love of God. Covering is not the keeping of secrets. Covering sin is bringing that into the presence of the Father in prayer, bringing it into the presence of the Father alone, not into the presence of others. There is a difference. And so when we are a prayer covering, when we pray the prayer of covering, it happens when we love fervently. All of this foolery about, I didn't want to tell you the truth because I didn't think you would receive it, or I didn't want to tell you what the Lord said to tell you. I refused the Lord's unction because I didn't want to give you a hard truth, or I didn't know how you would respond. None of that is our business. The response of others to truth has nothing to do with us. We've been trusted. We've been entrusted with a need to see something like God sees it, to offer the Lord the prayer that he needs to hear to intervene in the earth, to invite him to intervene in the earth. And so the covering prayer happens when we love fervently, when we love around offense, when we love around the unknown, not knowing how people are going to respond. Love goes around it. Fervent love goes beyond our bad choices and our bad decision. Fervent love goes around spirits that are not sober, spirits that are drunk on something else. And this is the kind of love that covers sins. So prayer leaders, what does this look like in our relationships with the saints? Intercessors, what does this look like? It's not just recording people's prayer requests and going before the Father on their behalf to pray for them. No, it is literally our prayer becoming a kind of shield, our prayer becoming a shield over that mark, bringing it into the presence of the Lord with an entreat for mercy, covering it, not denying that the sin happened or that it exists, but bringing the reality of the sin before the Lord as an offering. And Lord, have mercy. And when we do this enough, it cultivates in us the ability to give grace to one another. Just a thought. 1 Peter 4, 7 and 8. Read that in another version. We covered the ESV and the NASB. But look at it. We make good decisions and we're sober in spirit for the purpose of prayer. So I hope this is a blessing. Follow us on the Queen Life on Facebook, Uniquely Queen at Twitter, and then subscribe at thequeenlife.com. We'll see you next week for another prayer tool.